I think art in general, music in general, are primal to humanity, and anyone who's cultivating that or singing the song of their heart is feeding something that's super important to humanity. And I think the more we nurture that and the more we lift that up, it can only be a good thing to counteract some of these other things that are perhaps unhealthy.
So I'm very thrilled to be now moderating the arts panel, which is very exciting as a creative person myself. I always love learning from and being inspired and sharing stories with other creative folks from around the world. So we're going to have 3 speakers today. They're going to give a very short kind of introduction of themselves and share some of their work with you. And then we're going to have a conversation up here with some questions and open it up to you guys from the audience. So get your questions and your juices flowing for that. So first of all, I would like to invite up Karen Maurice-O'Leary. Welcome, Karen. Karen is a creative director in technology and mobile media based here in LA. And she's a storyteller with a passion for AR and VR for good. So Karen's a public speaker on all topics, from diversity and transformational technology, and also doing some work around creating compassionate workplaces. Her personal Home for Bolognese story, which is phenomenal, I highly recommend watching this, has been adopted and used by advertising agencies and corporate brands all across the globe. She's won, another great award winner here, she's won over 40 advertising industry awards from all around the world, including the Grand Prix in Cannes and the Grand Clio in Miami. She regularly, and this is very exciting, I'm excited to hear more about this, also creates large-scale public installations for music festivals as an independent artist, connecting people to the spaces and positive emotions around them. So Karen's been an art and creative director for multiple businesses and has a business degree from MIT. Thank you so much.
Pleasure to be here.
Next up, I would like to invite Sam Blakelock. Sam is a jazz musician, and he's also the founder of Pick Up Music, which is an online music education platform. Sam's a Pacific New Zealander who lives here in LA also, and he holds a Master of Music from the City University of New York City in jazz performance. He's performed off-Broadway shows in New York City. He's been a music director on cruise ships all around the world, and has also been on TV shows including American Idol, and performed at Blue Note Jazz Club, Smalls Jazz Club, which is one of my favorites in New York City, and at the very prestigious Carnegie Hall. Sam also, his work in social media has been recognized and featured at the NAMM trade show, and how to make it in the music business is taught at the Berklee College of Music. Sam is also the co-founder of OpenStage and is going to talk to us today about some of his experience and working with social video apps for musicians. So welcome, Sam. Thanks for joining us. And finally, I would like to invite to the stage Chris Sharp, a Dunedin, Dunners boy, fellow, woohoo, in the house, from Dunedin, but also living here in New York City. Where are we? Los Angeles. Los Angeles at the moment. Chris has over 10 years design agency experience, both in New Zealand and in London. And in 2013, he came here to pursue his love of fine art and to start a family. So Chris is inspired with how technology is now very intrinsically linked to our collective evolution, and a lot of his work strives to act as a catalyst to return us, even for a moment, to our primal nature and spirit. Beyond the conditions of our society and our environment into the true environment of energetic reality. Chris's pieces now hang in private collections alongside iconic work from modern art legends like Banksy and Shepard Fairey. So welcome, Chris. Thanks so much for joining us. So what I'm going to do is each of these guys are going to take 5 minutes or so, and we've got some presentations. As an arts panel, it's very visual, right? So we're going to have these guys share some of their work and then jump into some discussion.
Righty. Am I just going to click from here? Oh, there we go. I'm 9 months fresh into LA, so I'm fairly new. And my journey to really get here, I started off as an art director, copywriter, and advertising about 20 years ago in Auckland. And I've always kind of really scratched beneath the surface to find out what are the things that we're not talking about, what are the topics that we really need to kind of bring up, what are the points of tension, what are the things that need a spotlight. And in New Zealand, I've just highlighted this one, and I'll talk about my journey from moving from New Zealand in a moment. This was one which is where we took over, where we hacked the New Zealand website. They allowed us to hack it. We didn't do it illegally. And it was a way of automatically putting people in a homeless situation themselves virtually. So every time they went to click on the home button, that didn't go to the place that they wanted it to go to. It took them straight into a very intimate, very powerful story from someone who'd recently found themselves homeless. A very real story. And watching the interviews, it was completely heartbreaking. But the message of it was to really teach New Zealand and to open up these stories about why people have become unexpectedly homeless and to change perception on how quickly it can happen and how big the problem actually is. So that was just one of them. From there, as we've just been talking about, I've done a lot of public speaking in the last couple of years. I've got a story called Get Your Heart Home for the Bolognese. You can find it online, or if you want to reach out to me, I can send you the link. And very quickly, the story is I go into a lot of corporates to really help them with culture and honouring each other's time. And just remembering what our non-negotiable things are to get home. And it just feels like we need it to be reminded now more than ever. And the story is about a phone call that I got one night in the agency when my husband called and he said, "You better be bloody in that car on your way home. I've made you bolognese and I'm waiting." And I'd usually put up a fight, right? Like we all do. Usually an hour away or 2 hours away. But the reason why the story is so powerful is because I went home and had the bolognese with him, but the following day I lost him in an accident. So that bowl of bolognese that I had with him, unknowingly to me, was the last time that we ever got to spend together. And I just talked through how I kind of got through that and what bolognese means for everyone in this room. Like, what is the thing that warms your heart that you must get home for? So it's a teaching tool, it's a culture-changing tool. If anyone needs it, please reach out. Public art installations, I've done a few. I've just pulled a couple here just really quickly. One, this was in San Francisco where we had 300 creatives coming in from around the world and wanted to know what inspired them. Like, how do we connect a room of 300 people who have never really met each other before and find out something else that motivates them and inspires them? Everyone brought one object and made one little story, and we turned it into an installation for 3 days. It was a great way to kind of be a catalyst for chats and deeper stories. These are just some of the things that some people did. There were heartwarming things, there were funny things. It was just a fantastic way to kind of really open up and connect a community. And this one is, again, an installation in San Francisco called 1,000 Apologies. So I'm always looking for ways of creating a safe environment that people can be vulnerable and just get a little bit deeper. And 1,000 Apologies allowed people, it's a whole lot of typewriters set up, and you got to release one apology, or anything that you need to leave a little bit lighter. Whether it was funny, whether it was recent, whether it was from the past, just to write it up and let it go. This is continued on Instagram now and is about to tour to New Zealand. It's going to be in Luma as part of the light show in Queenstown next year. And lastly, I work as a creative strategist for Instagram and Facebook. I'm really jumping into AR and VR at the moment, trying to find the deepest, most meaningful ways to kind of connect people. It's mind-blowing in there at the moment. I'm super excited to be doing that as well. And that is me. I've got that.
I'm going to pass it over to Chris. So.
Hi, everybody. Tēnā koutou. It's a pleasure to be here. It's always nice to be surrounded by some fellow Kiwis. So my story, just briefly, is born in Dunedin and sort of moved my way up the charts from Christchurch to Wellington, eventually to London. where I was working as a graphic designer and a user interface designer for different design agencies, blue chip clients, which was fun and everything. But after 6 years of that, I started to feel like there was something missing. I had it described as a soul itch. And so I quit my jobs and I embarked on a trip with one of my best friends through South America for a few months. All through South America, Galapagos Islands, and at the end of the trip was for the past few years I'd been doing an annual pilgrimage to the Burning Man festival. And so at the end of these few months, we ended up at the Burning Man festival, and there I met my future wife and mother of my children. So hence a move to Los Angeles. And so when I got to Los Angeles, she kind of, could sense that I wasn't happy, and she sort of put to me, well, what is it that you want to do? Which is a pretty big and heavy question when you really sit with it. So I kind of went through a few different things that were kind of interesting, and then I just sort of thought, I think I just want to paint, really. So I've got this is less of a presentation and more just, I'm just going to go through some samples of my work. So when I got started, I legitimately thought that I was just going to start producing amazing pieces of work just straight off the bat. And I was genuinely disappointed when the work wasn't what I considered to be amazing. So you can see that a lot of my work is inspired by a lot of Indigenous art, and probably being from New Zealand and surrounded by Māori art, and how well integrated Māori culture is in New Zealand was quite an inspiration. I don't like to try and define too much or explain too much what my art is, because I feel like ultimately with art, the artist can have all the best intentions and explanations in the world, but ultimately art is about a direct experience between the viewer and the piece itself. And so they're going to take their own story from it. So in this way, I use a lot of symbolism and esoteric symbolism and mark making from different cultures across the world, but I like ideas of stripping them of all their meaning and their definition, and just merging them together in this kind of organic circuitry almost, and just seeing, okay, what energetically does that now put across to me? How does this make me feel? What's my direct experience of these symbols? So yeah, just some more examples of my work. I'm really inspired by things in nature like morphogenesis, which is how biology and geology forms itself. Like, why and how does it create these shapes that it creates? Again, you can see there's a lot of some African Indigenous art inspiration in this piece. Some mural work that I've done in Los Angeles. This was a fun project for a friend asked me to paint their piano. Again, you can see this kind of, it's almost like a stream of consciousness, so I have a few symbols that I kind of will start with, and then I'll just keep going freestyle until they all become a shape. So there's no real planning behind it. So this is a short film for a series of works that I did using iPhone screens. So I had a concept that I wanted to use smashed iPhone screens. We all know how many of those we go through as a society. So I had this concept of using them as a mosaic and paneling them together and creating artwork out of them. So the first one that I wanted to do, of course, was this huge 10-foot flag. I didn't start small. And so I ended up driving across most of Los Angeles, begging, borrowing, and stealing as many iPhone screens as I could. So this is a short piece that I put together, kind of showing the process for that.
Batuque brasileiro, na onda tem pandeiro. Bate meu coração, no ritmo da canção. Batuque brasileiro, na onda tem pandeiro. Bate meu coração, no ritmo da canção. Batuque brasileiro, na onda tem pandeiro. Bate meu coração, no ritmo da canção. Batuque brasileiro, na onda tem pandeiro. Bate meu coração, no ritmo da canção.
And yeah, so this is just some shots of a small part of the pile of iPhones that I still have way too many that I know what to do with. Well, actually, I ended up peeling just the glass screen off because the whole phone was too difficult to work with, so it's not super useful. A lot of cut fingers and splinters. And so this is the final piece, which I actually, one of the highlights so far of my creative pursuit was I sold this piece to a local collector who has an amazing private collection. I got to tour his space, and it was just the most insane collection I've ever seen in my life. He literally flew a concrete wall from the UK, and it was like 5 or 6 meters high by wide, that Banksy had painted, and he just cut it out from the side of a building and had it flown to his space. So it was just really amazing to first of all, sell a piece for 5 figures, and then have my work hanging alongside some real legends. So yeah, just really fulfilling, and just keeps the fire burning. When you get those little wins along the way. Some more examples of some other iPhone pieces. This one was called Siri, I Think I Love You. This one was called Public Enemy. So obviously there's some themes around this work around being targeted for our data, and people not really realizing, like, the more that we live our lives through these machines, the more we're being exploited for our information, which I think is becoming more and more public knowledge. This is my downtown at my studio space. Again, a little install I had at my space for a little show we did. And this is a mural at my camp at Burning Man Festival. We're called the Bureau of Misinformation. It's all set up like a bureaucratic sort of embassy, but really it's just a bar, and we give people all the wrong information and send them off to get lost in the desert. It's a lot of fun. Another mural that I did at Burning Man. And then I still have a lot of fun doing street art around the place. I started doing street art in Dunedin like over a decade ago, and it's still just a really fun way to get out and put art on the most important gallery in the world, which is the street, for public consumption. Yeah, thank you very much.
I don't know if I got my slides in on time, but let's see. Oh, there I am. I'm Sam. Thanks, Xavier, for having me. I don't talk to many Kiwis on the day-to-day, so this is really inspiring to hear everyone's stories here. So I'm the founder of Pick Up Music. We're an online music education subscription platform. So people pay $6 and get all access to content. So it's like Netflix, except instead of movies and TV, it's educational content. And yeah, bit of a backstory really quickly. From Christchurch, I was studying at University of Canterbury when this thing happened, and it wasn't too good for working musicians in the city. So I hopped on a cruise ship as a guitar player and music director, touring the world for 4 years. Then I moved to New York City in 2014 to study my master's, and I worked at Carnegie Hall in marketing and did off-Broadway TV shows. And around 2014, Instagram became more of a thing. I wasn't early on it, but I was later than a lot of people, so I was able to build a really large audience on there of over 650,000 musicians. And so through that, we had greater reach than a lot of traditional music media publications. So I was at like Madison Square Garden, seeing John Mayer doing press coverage, and I mean a lot of my favorite artists. So it was a bit of fun, but it wasn't a business. It wasn't making money or anything. So a year ago, what's next? Oh yeah. Yeah, this is the community. We do these meetups in LA, Boston, New York. We have members all over the world, all through the Instagram channel. So a year ago, I found a co-founder who could do everything I couldn't do, namely pretty much everything business related, because I'm a musician. And we launched a subscription platform, and we're bootstrapping that. We have 5,000 members, and we think it can be the place to learn music online. And we work with companies like Fender and venues around town to promote shows. Yeah, we do a monthly live session. You're all welcome to come in Hollywood, where we invite 5 popular artists and we film it, and it's all a bit of fun. And I'm also the co-founder of a social video app for musicians. We launched a month ago on the App Store, and this is all coming out of the Instagram community, which I've spent the past 5 years developing. So exploring the world of raising money, and it's going well so far. People are loving it. It's kind of solving a lot of the issues we see on TikTok and musicians, TikTok and Instagram for musicians. So it's 30-second videos, and yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of knowledgeable people in this room who could share advice on how to grow this project as well. So yeah, that's a bit about me.
I'm curious for each of you, when you each kind of touched on, it seems that technology plays a very big role in your work, either as a creative director, as an artist, as a musician, as an educator. How specifically do you find that it shapes or facilitates your work, or inspires perhaps in a more kind of antagonistic way, in terms of like data sharing and so forth, or data mining? How does it play into your day-to-day work? And if you were to be doing the same career, or to be in the same spot, say 15, 20 years ago, how do you think that would be different?
I guess I could take a stab at it. Yeah, I mean, and technology-wise, what a time to be alive, right? There's exciting things like Elon Musk's Neuralink, which is literally embedding chips in your brain. The virtual reality, which probably in my lifetime is going to be indistinguishable from reality itself. Quantum computing, that's potentially going to unlock some secrets of consciousness. I mean, these are all huge, exciting, mind, society exploding ideas. And those are the kinds of things that get me really excited. Obviously the choice to use iPhones in my work, and try to touch on subjects that the problems that come along with being so attached to these devices. It's just something that I'm constantly aware of, and obviously constantly using as well. As an artist, it's so important to, if you're not on Instagram, then it's going to be a lot harder. I know a lot of my sales have come through Instagram. I just think it's hugely inspiring to just stay abreast of it in general, and then just use it to your advantage.
Yeah, I'd jump in on the VR point, and I was talking to Xavier's lovely wife in the break on where that is going. I mean, that's where I'm feeling drawn to at the moment, on how you can really defy distance, and seeing the breakthroughs in the medical environment alone, like the way that it's relieving anxiety for children in hospitals going through procedures. Wow, and the clinical studies that are coming out. It's just, it gives me goosebumps thinking about it. It's shaping so much, and what is available for good in that space, and the way it's going to change so many industries is super exciting. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you worry about the bad side of it, or the maybe not so good side of it?
Well, I think, there's always a lot of fear. I sense a lot of fear about new technology coming through, but the thing is that we're creating it. Like, we can steer it. It's always quite funny that some of the conversations they have, that people feel like it's not within their power. Classic example would be Spark AR Studio, which is like an open AR studio for anyone to use, open source. And there's an entire community that are working on it live, sharing everything that they're making. It's the most mature bunch of creative people I've ever come across in my life. They are making things on a daily basis, sharing all their wins, sharing all their failures. Anyone from the public can jump in, and people are using this to build things in their garage and backyards. It's amazing. Phenomenal. So the thing is that we can steer it. So where do we want it to go as a team or as a community?
Yeah, I guess I'd add that we were talking about previously about social media and bringing up kids. It's when I talk to colleges, I talk a lot about the power of social media as a creative person, because it's been life-changing for me, not just business-wise, but also meeting friends. And I've seen the positive way that can impact young people's careers if it's approached in the right way. So I'm looking forward to going back to New Zealand, because in New Zealand, people are kind of off their phones a bit more than in the US, I find, which is good, but also it's bad because social media, it's a global thing, so you can feel connected and in touch with other people with the same niche interest as you. So for me, it was jazz guitar. So it excites me a lot, and it's constantly changing. So if you're if you're on top of what's changing, or you're creating it, like if you work for Facebook and these programs, it's really exciting. That's what I would.
Yeah, I think another way to look at virtual reality is that it can be used as almost like a giant empathy machine. So, there's a difference between reading a headline about, the horrors in Syria, for example, versus literally being airdropped inside of a war zone to really understand and feel what that's like for people. Is completely different experiences.
There was an amazing one in Australia where a team of VR artists went around to try and bridge Aboriginal community to some of their local government bodies, because were butting heads. And so what they did, because no one was having any time to speak and everyone was talking over each other, and this team of artists went around and interviewed some of the leaders of the Aboriginal community and got them to just speak in this beautiful cinematic piece of film, but just spill out their hearts and the things that they were worrying about, the things that they were worried about for the next generation, and then took those headsets into the local government bodies and got them just to sit, not talk, and just absorb and just listen. And it's had a really powerful effect on that. So those things are super exciting, yeah.
No, it's very exciting times. I'm curious for each of you, I think mostly some of you more recently in the US, but also in London. What has it meant for you to be a Kiwi? Like, what is it? What do you feel New Zealand has given you, or how it perhaps gives you a leg up or a step behind, or how do you feel as a Kiwi working internationally, and how do you feel like it has shaped your journey so far?
Yeah, go. So in New Zealand, I'm a Pacific New Zealander, so I'm in the minority. So there, I always had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, which inspired me to work super hard. And in the US, people think I'm probably Latino or something, so they don't even know about that story, but my Kiwiness is something that sets me apart and drives me, and also a bit of a chip on the shoulder coming from a smaller country. So that's how it affects me.
Yeah, I think generally it works great because we're likable, very likable internationally. I feel like if you introduce yourself as a New Zealander, immediately there's like, oh, sort of reaction. We're very down-to-earth people generally. We're very hands-on. We don't mind getting our hands dirty and just getting amongst it, which a lot of people just don't like to do. And yeah, the accent helps a little bit. What's left of it.
I actually forget I have an accent. I don't know about anyone else here, but I think I sound American, but I don't think I do, right?
And talking about getting amongst it, Karen was amazing this morning, arrived and like, right, do you need a hand? We were trying to put these tags
exactly.
in the plastic last minute. And I thought, only at a conference with a bunch of Kiwis does one of the speakers then kind of come up and start being behind the desk and pitching in. So it's really phenomenal. But
it's opened a lot of doors for me, and it's a great conversation starter, right? As soon as people ask you where you're from, they usually think you're Australian, which is fine. But it really has opened up a lot of doors being Kiwi, so I've always been super grateful for it.
Very cool. Karen, you spoke to us a bit about your extraordinary story of the Bolognese, the heart coming home for that, and kind of using that to, after such a tragic and obviously very incredibly difficult life moment, to inspire how you can go and help others, right? And to help take that value forward and impact other people's lives. Sometimes as in our work, it's the large adversities or the huge challenges that end up kind of helping us shift paths or open new doors. While I know it can be a difficult topic, I'm curious if any of you are willing to talk about some of these harder times in your career and how you have found it has kind of shaped where you've got to today.
Well, yeah. Mine, obviously, completely blew my entire world apart. I didn't go back to work. I didn't want anything to be the same. And it's really forced me to think about where I'm spending my time and my energy and my skills and my talent and what I'm making and what I'm putting out to the world. It gives me goosebumps thinking about it. Because the energy that you put out there is so important, regardless of what your job or what your industry is. You know, you've just got to, when you get I call it a life pattern breaker, which is what that was. It does, you piece back everything together and it makes you really check exactly what you're doing and what you want to do.
Yeah, I think for me, it's aside from the obvious challenges of getting your work out there and being exposed to the right people and making sales, for me, one of the biggest challenges has been more of the internal battle, the inner voice, the inner critic, creating like true discipline around your work, and just being okay with producing bad art or what you perceive as bad art. It makes me think of a quote, the master artist is the beginner who just never stopped beginning. I read recently about a study where they did with a bunch of potters. They had a group of potters on one side who were told to, learner potters, who were told to focus on just one piece for the next, I think it was a few months, and just really craft that one piece over the few months. And the other group, they just said to them, look, don't worry about quality, just pump out as many pots as you can in that time space. And then at the end of the study, they brought in some experts and had them judge, who produced the best quality work. And by far, leaps above the others was the people who were just producing more. So it's just about not getting caught up on whether you're judging and whether you think it's good or not. While people are deciding whether your art is good or not, you just are keep making more art. And I'm still learning that lesson.
For me, living through the earthquakes in Christchurch was an experience which I think inspired me to kind of actually leave Christchurch. For a lot of people, they stayed there and helped rebuild it. A lot of my musician friends moved to Melbourne and Wellington. But through that, I saw the power of small communities and how people can support each other. So that's something that I've carried with me and I've tried to actually apply through social media, creating communities and enabling people to connect with each other. And that's something I learned through the earthquake.
It's circling back to what Rod was saying earlier this morning, right? The power in local communities and having that kind of more intimate group of people to be able to kind of pull together and band together. And I think also, Chris, I think like Claudia, I don't know if she's still here, I can't see, but the idea of, the kind of steps forward, the back, the squiggly line, that it's not always just a linear path in one direction, and that sometimes it's these sideways steps or backward steps that can end up, kind of helping shape our future directions.
Absolutely.
As creative people, and I know there's a lot of other creative folk in the room, I'm curious where you guys look to for your inspiration. Like, where do you typically find it? How do you seek it out? Is it something you do in your daily routine, like at all different scales? How do you foster that kind of the inspiration in your work?
Mine's people. So it's always people. Whether I'm people watching or I'm making participation art, so I can have the glorious moment of standing back and watching the installation just work on its own with the community of people. The public art that I do feeds how my brain works in the office environment. It works parallel. And if I haven't made a piece of art or seen or got a 1,000 apology from someone, I start to feel I'm not connected. Like, what's going on in the world outside of the office bubble? It's so important. So that always fuels me.
Yeah, I agree with that. Surrounding yourself with a community of people who are also inspired and talented, I think is such a driving factor for me, and part of the reason why I moved to LA. I had more friends here than in New York, so that's been a big part of keeping me, hardworking and inspired is people.
I think for me, aside from being, trying to be constantly inspired by nature and Indigenous art in general, like I mentioned earlier, my annual pilgrimage to Burning Man is just it's a huge undertaking, and when you're there, it's really just the best of the best in the world, the best engineers, the best artists, and it's just such a huge, expansive place that it really just blows me away. I had the pleasure of taking my parents last year, who are 64 and 65, and my dad just had his jaw on the ground the entire time. He just was just so blown away by it. I could see him going back again, but Mum was like, "Oh, I enjoyed it, but I don't think I'll be going back again." But yeah, they really did it. They roughed it and they did it. And being Kiwis, over 40, 50 years of camping experience, that wasn't such a big jump for them. So yeah, Burning Man is definitely a huge inspiration for me. And also over the past sort of 3 to 4 years, I've been working with sort of a ceremonial use of plant medicine. So both ayahuasca and wachuma, which is a San Pedro cactus. If you want to talk about habitual pattern interrupts, that's the mother of all interruptions. It really just takes you back to what's important, and it really helps you to process things that you perhaps have been burying or not dealing with. Just everything just comes right to the forefront, and it can be really difficult, but it can be also really rewarding. I would say those two things are one of my biggest inspirations.
Amazing. I'm dying to go to Burning Man. I've still never done it. It's one of those things every year I'm like, okay, next year I'm going to do it while I live here. Quick side question, Karen. I'm curious with the 1,000 apologies. Have there been any kind of very unexpected or inspiring, like what's one of the most inspiring stories that's come out of that project for you?
They're all completely different levels, and I think that's the joy of just being plugged into it. I can kind of, get them from different countries. They can be really kind of lightweight. They can be as deep as something like, "Dear past, I'm sorry I never acknowledged you or pretended you didn't exist." Or ones that are just so soft but almost bring a tear to my eye. There was one that someone sent to me which was, "Dear Andy," which is her husband, "Dear Andy, I'm so sorry I don't hold your hand as much in public. I know you really like it." And then really funny things where it's like, "Dear lover, I'm sorry I watched Game of Thrones without you." And I love the spectrum of it, and they're all different all the time. And sometimes if there was some climate change ones came through recently, which I thought was really interesting, seeing the different trends that happen. But there's such a mixed bag, which is just beautiful.
Amazing. I do have more questions, but I want to pause there and see if the audience has any questions at this point.
You get your hand up? No?
If people are being shy, I can start with one, picking off your point, Karen, around climate change. I think we're talking about technology, we're talking about globalization. We're at a time of like unbelievable opportunity and potential and huge unknowns, which is very, very exciting. But we're also at a time of some very, very serious global crises, right? Climate being one of them. We're seeing, thanks to Maurice, luckily New Zealand's not in that category, but to the same degree, but huge increase in inequity in societies, the public health crises that we're seeing. How do you, in your kind of daily work, how do some of these kind of extremes or the challenges, I know for me personally in my work sometimes it feels so overwhelming that it can be a little paralyzing, right? It's like, my gosh, I'm working, we want to do this, we're trying to help this, and how are we going to do it? I'm curious for you guys how it impacts your day-to-day.
Well, I'm at the coalface of it, which I love, right? So a lot of the projects I work on at the moment, I'm doing a huge amount in electric vehicle launches, directly linked to climate change. I've got a massive project on for that at the moment, or I've got another project that was about LGBTI community, or I've just finished another one which is about gender bias in the tech industry, and we've made a huge documentary and it's about to come out. Super exciting. So all my projects are actually just directly linked to it. Wow. Culture change is kind of where I'm at. Yeah,
that's a big question. I don't have a big answer for the big question, but I got a small answer, and so I just try and focus on what I'm doing, which in general is making music education more accessible and affordable, and I feel like that might be a small thing which can help people which is part of a bigger problem, though.
While those bigger subjects aren't necessarily subjects that I'm tackling in my art to date, I think art in general, music in general, are primal to humanity, and anyone who's cultivating that or singing the song of their heart is feeding something that's super important to humanity. And I think the more we nurture that and more we lift that up, it can only be a good thing to counteract some of these other things that are perhaps unhealthy.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think I saw the green cube in the back corner there.
Thank you for sharing. Just wanted to know on your, not just your personal side, meeting your wife at Burning Man, but on a business sense of connections and networking, you used Instagrams and so forth. But I just wanted to know the connections for the business side and how that networking was for you guys and what the difficulties and how did you guys make that decision if, for example, Sam, you picked your CTO and business partner?
Sorry, what was the question?
The question was on the business element of networking. How did you guys figure it out who you guys really wanted to work with as a business partner, or what was the difficulties and challenges, and what did you guys come up with?
Yeah, for me, I got very, very lucky. Actually, I got very unlucky, and then I got very, very lucky. So the first partner I found for the business ended up not being the best guy. And actually, he was a Kiwi, but ended up not being the best type of Kiwi. Anyway, through that, I just kept doing what I was doing, and it was hard to trust people after that. But then I found my co-founder right now. His name's Cam. He's from Melbourne, and he just complements. He pretty much does everything I can't do, which I think is a great relationship to have. And then there's the crossover, which is our shared passion, which for us is music. So it's like a really great working relationship. And it's also one of the few relationships which I have, which is strictly business. I end up usually working with a lot of artists. I become friends with artists I work with, so it's always a little bit complicated. But I think how that happened was I was just doing what I was doing. Then he approached me, and we figured it out.
I'm not so much. I don't know if my background is going well. I did have my own agency in New Zealand for 5 years and ran that, and I think there were friends involved as well. So I think the lesson I learned from that is, everyone tells you don't work with your friends, but you do it anyway because we're a sucker for punishment. But I found that the relationships that did work the best were ones where clear boundaries were set. Unless you're really up for not losing a friend as in having a fight, but losing a friend where you don't value the time you have with them outside of work. That was a huge lesson that I learned, because we worked together every single day, and then as soon as we were not working, we didn't want to hang out because we already seen each other for friggin' 10 hours. So that was a big thing I learned.
In all honesty, I'm still working that out. I'm still on the journey. That would be a question I would ask these guys. But yeah, in terms of people, there are always red flags early on, and it's just about staying close with your intuition and listening to your heart. And you know when you vibe with people. And coming back to the Kiwi thing, like Kiwis are great at just knocking down the barriers and getting rid of all the bullshit and just getting to the heart of the matter and really, showing your true self, wearing your heart on your sleeve. So that's worked out for me pretty well so far.
And saying that, I just remembered I wanted to really find people in Australia and in the US who are really good VR developers who had the same shared passion about scaling empathy as what I did. And I just went, to your point, found them, rang them up, went and had a cup of tea. And then we knew in an instant if we wanted to do projects together or if we didn't. And those people have become, the team that I met in Australia, we've become real close mates, and they're now talking about moving to LA. I'm like, yes. So that's all going to work out, yeah.
Brilliant. There was a question here, if you can throw the cube up.
Hi, so you've landed in LA and you're creative and you're all ready to start. How did you start? Like, how did you build the business? How did you start the business? What are the first steps of advice you'd give us?
Yes, but I didn't start business from scratch. Yeah. So I will start. So I was very lucky. I arrived here and I already had a network to walk into. So And they have held me together because I arrived on my own with no family. So I got to walk into them, which has been incredible. And they've really, the biggest thing I've learned about LA is you've got to go out and find it. It's so vast that you have to break out of your comfort zone, hunt people down, follow the fuck up. That was amazing because it's so true. And make the time to have these conversations. And the conversations I think aren't going to go anywhere end up being the best ones. That's been the most incredible thing. The things that I've gone, this is the one I must have. I've been distracted and had a cup of tea with someone else, and that's been the most profitable, insane chat of all times. You never know what way it's going to go.
Yeah, I learnt the not following the fuck up lesson the hard way. I met a guy at a social gathering who was an art critic and curator, and just at the time I didn't feel like I was proud enough of my work, and so I let it string on for too long, and then by the time I actually called him, he couldn't even remember meeting me, so you just have to act and just do it. Yeah.
I found moving to LA super easy because I would visit here like a couple of times a year from New York. So I think that's one good approach, is just visiting, building your network. So then when you do make the move here, I don't know if you already live here, but also the social media thing was very, very helpful in my world because a lot of people in LA, musicians, use it a lot. So I already had a network here established. So I just came straight in, and also on the business side, this was closer to where the talent is, so it just made sense.
It also seems like in LA you should get a dog.
Yeah, we were talking about dog options before.
Same in New York. It's like a
wow, man.
Totally differently.
Tell you what.
I was dog sitting for a friend last year in the summer, and I walked over and was like, hi, oh my God, hi, how's it going? So amazing. Oh, would you like a coffee? And I was just like, am I in New York City? This is insane. Totally different world. Any other? I think I saw one other question. No? I had, sorry. Okay, yes, over there. Can you throw that green cube over? Big throw, but you can do it. That's right. It's fun to throw the cube.
Wait, I'm throwing the cube.
We love the cube.
There we go.
Sam, I just wanted to ask you about the chip on your shoulder. And do you still feel like you have that? Or do you feel like it's better now, and that being here in a sort of, or doing the global thing that you've done, has that made it better for you?
As a Kiwi, do you mean?
Yeah, and for you as a person, I'm just curious to know.
My dad's a psychiatrist. He could probably talk about like if you're a child and you're like the second, or third child, like the younger child. So I wonder if that's part of it, as well as the Kiwi thing, as well as the Pacific thing. But it feels like there's like lots of chips here, and I don't think that'll ever go away. It's kind of like what the speaker talked about with Mordor. It just feels like just got something to prove, and I don't think it'll ever go away. But I'm okay with that. Yeah.
The comfortable chips.
Yeah, potato chips.
Salt and vinegar.
It's like crumbs.
I've got a two-part question for you guys to wrap us up, with a two-word answer, perhaps, or a two-sentence answer.
Raining us in.
What scares you the most about where you're going and what's ahead, and what excites you the most?
They're the same feeling, first of all, I think, until you decide what emotion you're going to attach to them.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe triggered by different things.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I always do that when I'm about to do something. I'm like, am I really nervous or am I just really excited? Mm-hmm. Let's just be really excited today. Okay. The way it scares me and excites me, the rate that technology is changing and how it's coming at us so fast. It gives me anxiety that I'm not learning enough at times, and it's my job to do that. So it's like trying to, what's the analogy they use? Trying to drink out of a fire hydrant. That's what and it is. Yeah. I'm excited and scared about, we've just got to steer it, and it's up to all of us. We've got to steer it to the direction that we want it to go in.
Yeah, I agree. The scared thing, I would say, was speed, the speed which everything's moving. Sometimes it feels like it's all happening very, very fast in terms of technology. And then the thing which I'm most excited about is accessibility, whether that's education or there's just far fewer middlemen now in a lot of fields. So that excites me a lot.
I think excitement for me would be the combination of art and technology for elevating consciousness in general for humanity. That's really turns me on. And scared, I guess it's less scared. There's not a lot that scares me in my particular industry, but I think what's troubling is how money in the bizarre art world has become one of the kind of intrinsic important parts of the pieces themselves, less about whether this is actually a good piece of art or not. So that the way that whole fine art world is going is a little like I just find strange and troubling.
Amazing. Thank you, guys. Well, I'm going to wrap us up because we're going to hit our lunch break and Google Tours. But please join me for a huge round of applause for these guys for the arts panel.